And this was like, reunited or whatever. Ooh, I just burped.
You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Lohman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Lohman.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the House of Sunny podcast. I'm here with Doug from The Rational Capitalist.
Hello, Sunny. How are
Doug?
you today?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm doing great. Just never been
Except
better.
for your cold. Doug has a little bit of a cold, and we'll just
also
try to
known
get
as
through.
also known as COVID.
Yes, apparently.
Yeah.
It's so hard to know what to trust. Today we're going to talk about colonialism and continue talking about the royal family and some of the gossipy stuff we'll get to in the end. But the first part, I just want to talk about the colonialism aspect of the criticism of the Queen and Britain that's been coming out since she died, which is great. Wait for someone to die and then trash them and their country. But of course, this was going on before she died. So I think that
Right.
the Queen was so good and so dignified that people had a harder time coming down hard on the situation because of her, And now that she's dead, I think we're going to hear this whole thing is going to ramp up to 10, the colonialism stuff, and as if it's been pretty bad already.
But I don't pay as attention to it as much as you do, but I did see it seemed like it was like the MSNBC type anchors that were provoking this reaction and making these really outrageous statements, and then all the stuff was erupting. Is it really wide? And someone had come in, so a British guy had come on and said, look, that's like 10% of the people are up in arms about the Queen or something. So is this really like a big deal, or is this more of like a lefty MSNBC
that's a good
provocation?
Question. Aren't they all provocations? But I think if they're magnifying it, that's what everybody's looking at. And then the next thing you know, mainstream thought is that the British are evil, colonialism is evil. Like colonialism, they act like that's only a British thing. The whole term has become only applied to what the British did when they were expanding their empire. Because they're the biggest and the best. I mean, that's what happens, I guess. But if you look at history, and we've talked about this a lot. Okay, in the history of the world, might makes right. Period. And that includes today. And the only reason that we're living in this relatively calm and peaceful situation where other countries can kind of have their sovereignty and be assholes and idiots is because the United States, even though it is also flawed and obviously especially run by the CIA and the FBI, it's doing shitty things and everything. But even so, we are at least outwardly trying to operate on a principle of fairness and justice and democracy and all that stuff. So they've had to play lip service to that anyway. And I think deep down, Americans are good people. And so that projected out. And I think as you and I were talking about, I watched this video about this guy who was talking about how it's just the shipping, the shipping being, globalism is dead just because America doesn't want to monitor the shipping anymore and protect it or isn't capable of it or whatever we're going through. We were protecting all of this worldwide shipping from basically piracy. And so as a result, global commerce has thrived. So because of the goodness of the countries that have been the global powers, you've seen this long period of basically progress, right? And advancement, and the human condition just kind of getting better and better and better every 100 years. And that's because of Britain and because of us. And now, the question remains, what's the future going to be like, I guess, once if that goes away. And there are a lot of people that want that to go away. And they act like the best people in the history of mankind are the worst because of what were norms. I mean, it was normal to conquer a people and basically slaughter them and take, yeah, I mean, like this was the history of humans. And so it's bad that the British went in and took over India, say, and ruled over them. Is it bad? I mean, by today's standards, I guess it is. And yet it brought people out, a lot of people out of poverty. They left a lot of infrastructure and success, buildings, things like that. I'm gonna play a clip,
Common law.
law and things like that. So
Yep.
that enabled them to sell, to declare themselves, you know, to not just become independent, but to have a spirit of individualism within their own governments that they then created, which didn't always occur. So we'll get into this stuff, but basically the queen has died, and now creatures like this woman, I'm just going to share this screen. Creatures like this crazy lady who is apparently a professor. I don't even know how to pronounce her name. Uju Anya. So does that mean she's actually from Africa, or is that her American African, the stupid American African names? Uju Anya, a professor at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, wrote a tweet saying, I heard the chief monarch of a thieving, raping, genocidal empire is finally dying. May her pain be excruciating.
Wow.
I mean, right? That's horrible. What a horrible, horrible person. And that tweet got deleted. And then she wrote something like, I'm not wishing her dead. She's dying already. I'm wishing her an agonizingly painful death like the one she caused for millions of people. I don't think you can really rationalize and convince yourself to say something like that if you don't truly believe that she was evil, and she, like, the queen was evil, and the queen and Britain are evil and caused a lot of pain. And I don't think you can come to that conclusion without a total ignorance and lack of historical understanding and perspective.
Can I
You know,
jump in for some just a couple things here? One is, let's just get the facts straight. Didn't she become monarch sometime around 1950, as I understand it? It was like after World War II. And so the British Empire had already been basically
they're
falling
in
apart.
decline at that point. It's
And
post World War II, right?
most of these countries actually declared their independence from Britain in this period. There were really very few colonial colonies at this point. Um, India, declared its independence. Um,
Lots of
I
African
mean,
states. Yeah, I
I
mean, you're
mean, the
right,
Middle
but
East,
I
everything.
don't.
So, like, what was she? I mean, just as a factual matter, like, was the Queen raping and pillaging third world countries? Was she was she on a
Again,
horse? Like,
it's the ignorance, that the just utter historical ignorance, but also there's a deep hatred for white people and English people in particular, and colonialism as a conquering strategy, I guess. I mean, we were a colony of England. We were also a colony of England, and we also declared our independence as well as a lot of other countries. I don't hate the British because they colonized. I mean, I guess I wasn't around. I don't really. This is crazy
yeah,
to
well,
me. This is just
this is the
craziness.
second thing I wanted to say, which is, why does history need to get like a scarlet letter or like a smiley sticker? Like, history is what it is. There were, from the Roman Empire to the Ottoman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire to the British Empire. Um, there have been empires and colonization and conquering. And so we look back at that, and the fact that, like you said in the opening, the fact that we have relative peace, security, and independence throughout the world is a result of Western ideas on individualism, individual
Yeah.
rights, property rights, common law. It was it was feudalism and slavery that was ended by the British Empire.
Yeah. I mean,
um
that's the thing. That's the thing too,
why
is
can't we just, why does it have to be either it's great or it's horrible and we wish them death? Like, why can't it be like, yeah, from our standard, colonization and taking over other countries isn't a good idea. Like no one would think that's a good idea anymore. But it was because of Western ideas and the influence of Western civilization that we have those ideas now in the first place. So why can't we just look at history, learn from it, and then try and be better going forward as far as like what
That's
we're
kind
doing,
of what I
and also
thought.
recognize the good.
That's kind of
Uh,
what I thought we were doing in the world. I thought we were looking at history, never forget, and like trying to better ourselves and move past things. But there's a growing group of people who just want to punish people and punish people who aren't even have nothing to do with whatever happened in the past. But I also think that we need to not just say, look, I had nothing to do with that, or the queen had nothing to do with that. I think it's really important today to be like, what was so wrong about that? I mean, in the scope of history, okay, we can talk about, is there a better way? But in the scope of history, that was actually better than what you saw in the history of conquering. So if you're going to be conquered and you're a primitive people, I choose the British. I choose the British in all of the historical. I even choose the British over the Romans, although I think the Romans would be my number two. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think of it this way. I think it's almost the wrong way to think about it because we're making those evaluations from the perspective of today and kind of what we know. I mean, obviously, if you're sitting around anywhere at any point in history and someone comes and takes over your country and kills your family and your people and imposes their way of life on you,
Yeah, it's not
like
good.
it's not going to be good. And so I would never, it's 2022. So now sitting here in a nice office, I can say, geez, that's terrible. Like you shouldn't do that. I'm not going to go get my army and go conquer the people down the road. But so that's our theory and philosophy going forward. But like, why would I look at the past and like have to morally evaluate it? Like that's not the point of history. It's just this is what happened, and let's learn from
So
that
you're
and
saying,
understand it.
but so you're saying don't, I mean, but I think it is important to keep the context of history because what they want us to feel is like, oh, we have to somehow we have to atone and make reparations for this past evil that destroyed all these families in these countries and these people and caused all this pain, and we owe their descendants something as descendants of the people
Right.
who did that. So I think it's important to be like, no, this was not so bad. I mean, what was your alternative in life? Okay, if you're in some African tribe, your alternative is that you continue to live in a mud hut and maybe you get killed by a warring neighboring tribe, and maybe you get sold into slavery by your tribe, or maybe you get conquered and put into slavery and now you're the slave of another tribe or you're killed. I mean, that was fucking life back then. And I'm not trying to justify what I
Right.
think today we rightly say, okay, invading other nations and conquering them and imposing yourself on those people is in general not something we look at as a positive. Um, However, I would make the argument that, when you look at our performance in Afghanistan, for example, I would prefer it if we had gone in there a little tougher. And if that's truly the country that was attacking us, on 9/11, which I doubt, but you hear what I'm saying. If we're
Yeah.
going to go into a country and we're mad at them and we feel like they've hurt us and we're going to fight them, go in and get it over with and conquer them and impose your will on them like we did in Japan. So I there are some contexts where I don't want to get sidetracked into these like exceptions. So I think we can generally say that we don't think that's a good idea, that you invade a country, take them over, conquer their people and tell them what to do and maybe kill a bunch of people. That's in general not good. But back then, there's just nothing to be ashamed about, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think the people who perpetrated that have anything to be ashamed about, because back then the alternatives were often either the same or worse. And life was just more brutal because Western ideas had not taken hold globally, right? Life was just more brutal. and you just had to put up with more of that kind of thing. So were you morally outraged when it was the British that conquered your little African tribe versus the neighboring African tribe? Were you like, oh my gosh, the British, they're so bad compared to the Zulu? I don't think that people thought in those terms. It was just like, it was kill or be killed in a way. It was be tough or be conquered.
Right. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, let's say something was terrible in history. I don't feel guilt for that. It has nothing to, I mean, I don't care,
But
is what
should
I'm
they?
saying.
Should they all should our
Like,
ancestors, can you look back at the British of 300 years ago and say they were evil? Would you say that?
no.
Because in the context of that day, what they were doing was normal, and it was a much rougher world then. You either perpetrated that kind of stuff or
Well,
you
of
were
course,
conquered yourself.
all of human history is a one after the other, people killing each other for thousands of years. That's why this is such a stupid,
That's what I'm trying to say.
this
Like we
historical revisionism, this collectivized guilt that, like, if you can like connect the dots of some society back to some other society that did something bad according to our modern standards, and that we should then, modern people should then how feel guilt or oh reparations, is preposterous. It's ridiculous.
I agree, but I'm also saying it's not just about us. It's about looking back and stamping those people with a moral judgment that they also don't deserve.
Right.
It's not just our unearned guilt that I'm talking about. It's
But I'm saying
theirs.
not, I'm saying okay, but I'm even going beyond that and saying these people are going back and stamping them morally evil.
Yeah.
I don't think it's right to even go back and stamp them morally good. Like, I just think you have to look at the context of the time and say, what was going on then? Like, yes, if someone did something by our standards that's evil, fine. Like, okay. But like you're saying, 300 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, when people were warned, we can't put ourselves back in that time and that context of knowledge and the context of the ideas, the ideology, the religion, the religious warfare, the culture of those times, and say, oh no, I would never have done that. I would never have participated in this.
Clearly a
I would
lot
have
of
fought
people
against it.
clearly a lot of people would have been the good Germans. That
Right.
supposedly we shun, and we're like, oh my gosh, those were the worst people. And now they're my neighbors. Assholes. You know?
Yeah, this is just it's such a superficial, it's all meant, like, I think what your point is, or what I'm getting from what a lot of what you're saying is, like, you read that tweet from that professor. Like, what's her goal? Her goal is to shame an entire race of people, an
Yes.
entire country,
It's not
and
about facts. It's not
to
about actual history.
delegitimize,
Yeah.
yeah, and then to delegitimize everything positive that they've done or accomplished, or any pride that they have, because of some aspect of history.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. And I guess I'm trying to say too that the way to defeat that is to never accept any guilt for any of it. And I know that
Yeah.
what I'm not saying you can't look back and analyze it and go, okay, the most ideal social system is one like it's like us where we don't invade other, well, listen, exceptions aside, I feel like I have to say that
Yeah, yeah,
because I
yeah.
know that America is not innocent in its behavior, especially in the last 100 years. But you can look back and go, that's not, as a country, I don't think we should behave that way. I don't want us to conquer,
Right.
just an innocent, I don't want us to go conquer Colombia and tell Colombians how to be and invade them and take over and impose. I mean, there's a certain romance in that because you think, well, we're better and we know better and we have this freedom and we have this independence, we have these Bill of Rights, and the Colombians would benefit from that. But really, that's their business. I feel the same about our country. Like I just want people to be able to mind their own business.
Well, I think it's actually a more modern observation that conquering people and the idea of like a universal human values with respect to how societies are run is probably not right. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there was probably more like the missionary idea of the 19th century. There was a great awakening in the United States where these Protestant missionaries went all over the world, and most of them were killed. They'd go to Middle Eastern countries and try and spread Christianity. And they
Knock,
were
knock, knock.
absolutely,
Can I tell you about your Lord and Savior?
seriously, this is what they were doing, and they were getting murdered, and they were
Yes.
trying to, you know, they would build hospitals and churches and schools, and the locals would say, "Oh, thanks for doing all that." Then they'd kill them all. But anyways, my point is that there's been like a missionary spirit of Christianity throughout, you know, throughout the West. But you know, there was an idea, in other words, that we've got it right, whether it's Christianity or Western ideas or
Yeah.
whatever. We're gonna tell you primitive idiots how to live. And I'm saying, like, I think that was probably a more justified attitude like a couple hundred years ago. Like, people, that's what people thought. That was like commonplace. That was
Yes.
bedrock foundational knowledge. We have
Yes.
we
Of
have the
course, we're
way. We're gonna
superior. We
spread
have
the
this
way.
civilized society. We're going to bring civilization to the brutes.
And then over the course of hundreds of years of watching this, that we can sit back and look at hindsight and say, I don't know about that. Like,
Yeah.
but
Ugh.
history and experience we have as Western people to say, all right, we like how we live. But we don't have to go impose that on other people. We don't have to spread our values to other people. We have to protect ourselves from them. And that's probably the right way to do it. But my point is that, like, that I think is an objective way to look at the world, is to you know, to look at the circumstances of that time and just try and learn from it and understand it, and
Right.
then move forward. But this idea of like shaming people,
Yeah.
or trying to justify or validate what someone else did. Oh no, it was all good. No, of
Yeah.
course,
And I
you
don't
know.
think you can look at a single, say, country. There's no evil empire. You know what I mean? Like, you don't look at a country and go, wow, everyone in that country was evil. Like Genghis Khan. Oh, well, under Genghis Khan, China was the evil empire. You know, Genghis Khan was a conqueror and a murderer, but you know, they're just the Chinese. Like they're just people like any other people in history
Actually,
with
they
a
brought a lot
certain,
of great things to some of the places they conquered too. There was, you know,
yeah.
that's a whole history in and of itself. So
So it's weird for people to sort of look down on an entire culture and an entire country of people over things that happened that they didn't like. That, you know, so what? I don't even care if you didn't like it. That's just the way the cookie crumbled at the time, and it has nothing to do with us. And I just, even if I'm related to one of the guys that went to India and conquered it, I don't look back at that ancestor and go, what a dick. I don't think it was just so part of the brutal world back then. And again, if you're going to be conquered by somebody, I would rather be conquered by people who respect civil rights on some level and the rule of law, even if it's more applied to their people than my people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Everybody needs to knock it off. I'm so sick of this shit. Right. And I want to play part of Tucker's monologue about this, because I thought he did a good job of kind of talking about the history of Britain. Just a quick minute here of his monologue from the other day. Okay, I'm sharing the sound.
History and a language and a culture and a genuinely remarkable people. A country in the North Atlantic the size of Alabama that somehow took over the world and ruled it with decency unmatched by any empire in human history. The British Empire was not perfect, but it was far more humane than any other, ever. It's gone now, barely even remembered. Queen Elizabeth II was the last living link to a truly great Britain. Today on social media, the usual ghouls celebrated her death. Quote, "May her pain be excruciating."
Okay, I'm gonna forward
Agony.
this.
ABC News seconded aware of what came after it. And speaking of what did come after the British Empire, how, for example, did Africa fare after the British left? Let's see. Uganda got Idi Amin, who was a cannibal.
Isn't that a good point?
Rhodesia became Zimbabwe and then became the poorest country on the planet under the racist lunatic Robert Mugabe. As of tonight, South Africa is still being run into the ground by an incompetent kleptocrat called Cyril Ramaphosa. So it's hard to see any of that as an improvement because it's not an improvement. Sorry, Atlantic Magazine. And now, of course, the entire continent of Africa has a new master, the Chinese government. China is the latest colonial power to dominate Africa. Its subjects will be pining for the British soon, assuming they are not already. In an ideal world, there would not be empires, no empires, only sovereign nations. But we don't have that world, and we never have had that world, going back to at least the Assyrians.
I feel like we've
1400 years
had
before Christ.
that world the last, I mean, pretty close to it in the last post World War II. I know that there are exceptions, but in the history of the world, it seems like we've had a relatively peaceful globe since World War II, with most countries getting to set their own terms, That's probably naive. That's probably a really naive view.
I would disagree with that, but it's relatively better than it was, that's for sure.
Christ. In the
Can you hear
real
me?
world, the one that we
Yeah.
live in,
Okay, my mic.
strong countries dominate weak countries. And that
Strong
trend
countries
shows no sign
dominate
of
weak
changing.
countries. End of story.
The very least you can say about the English is that they took their colonial responsibilities seriously. They didn't just take things, they added. When the US government withdrew from Afghanistan after 20 years, we left behind airstrips, shipping containers, and guns. When the British pulled out of India, they left behind an entire civilization, a language, a legal system, schools, churches, and public buildings, all of which are still in use today. Here's the train station the English built in Bombay, for example. There's nothing like that in Washington, D.C. right now, much less in Kabul or Baghdad. Today, India is far more powerful than the UK, the nation that once ruled it, and yet after 75 years of independence, has that country produced a single building as beautiful as the Bombay train station that the British colonialists built? No, sadly, it has not. Not one. So despite what they may be claiming on Twitter tonight, the British Empire was more than just genocide. In fact, the British did not commit genocide, except arguably against the Dutch during the Boer War. The British did give the world the Magna Carta and habeas corpus and free speech. They helped end the transatlantic slave trade, as well as the ritual murder of widows in India. The British Empire spread Protestant Christianity to the entire world. It published some of the greatest literature ever written and produced the finest manufactured goods ever made anywhere at any time, including now. It was an impressive place run by impressive people. We will see many empires going forward, but we will never
right?
see one so benign.
It was an impressive place run by impressive people. So shut up. I mean, I'm done. I am just done with this. It's not even just about reparations and like whatever. It's literally you are a moron if you can't see that, You're an ignorant moron or you're just really malevolent, nihilistic. And that woman who did that tweet is most likely just in her soul a hater and a mean spirit. You just couldn't have that sentiment about anybody. Like when John McCain died, I was glad he was dead, but I didn't wish he suffered. Like, I mean, that's the person who plucks wings off of a bird, or something. It's like, ooh, that's icky.
Yeah, that level of malevolence and hatred is really alarming.
It really is.
This is a professor at Carnegie Mellon, and so it shows you the depths of these people's souls. That's their first reaction, is this level of. I mean, they've truly been. Not that we can't see anything wrong with the British Empire or something, but like that's your first thought is, well, I'm going to wipe away all these things. And this thing that I think I'm going to wish someone excruciating pain in their death. I just don't get it. I mean, I get it. I think it's a warning. It's a warning sign that someone that's sick and twisted
Has
who's
such a position.
has that position that, you know, this is not, you know, we always think that like the bad guys are like the guys with the pitchforks and the stupid, you know, people, barbarians at the gates. These are the intellectuals at the gates. These are the people that we
Inside the
have to be
gates.
right, that run that, yeah, that
Well,
are
and
guarding
that's
the
just it.
gates.
I mean, you were asking earlier, is it just MSNBC magnifying it? Well, yeah, but it's
Yeah.
these are the people in control, are the people like this woman who's a professor. And I was reading today, you know, that guy Brian Stelter, who is such a awful partisan
Humpty Dumpty.
person on CNN, and he was basically fired because of it. Well, he's gotten a job at Harvard.
Oh,
And Jen Psaki, that horrible lying piece of shit from the White House, has a job on NBC. And the person who's the Biden spokesperson came out of some other media place, right? So it's just like it's all that group of people,
revolving
and
door.
they are in control. They are the people with the power, and they are malevolent and do, oh, they're just dark people. And when you think about Biden and that speech he gave with the red lights and all this stuff, and you're like, how are they not seeing this? Like, this is a reflection of who they are and what they think of us. And they truly do believe that we are too evil and too dumb to decide who will lead us. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
think they want to hurt people. I think, like, in their soul, like especially the people in charge,
Yeah.
in their soul, they can't wait to.
It's a bloodlust. I mean, this is
Yes,
beyond
it's a
like,
bloodlust. That's a perfect word.
you know, when you see like civil wars break out, you know, in like say the Balkans or something like that, or in the, you know, the North South or whatever, and you kind of study the people and the culture around those times, like there's a real bloodlust that like develops between people of certain regions or areas that like really hate each other, and they get to the point where they want to kill each other. They like want to
Yeah.
kill. And of course, you know, we have millions of years of primate evolution here. You know, and we all have this like collectivist gene, that tribalist gene that can be turned on. And we see that at football games or sporting events or whatever, we're all dancing and cheering together, and we hate the other team and everything else, and we can sort of exercise that collectivist gene or that tribal gene sort of in a benevolent, funny, you know, safe, harmless way. But when I see this kind of stuff coming out, the white hatred, the white privilege stuff,
Yeah.
the wishing that a queen dies an excruciating death, this is this is bloodlust. I mean, these are people that, if we're not careful, if they're going to be the ones guarding the concentration camps.
I have noticed in conversation, if you try to talk to people who push this white privilege thing, who really believe it, if you continue to sort of tap at them with, well, what do you want eventually? Like, what's the end game? If you try to get them to that point, they will admit that it's camps. I mean, and re-education and reparations, meaning all your stuff is taken and your family is impoverished and relegated to second class. Maybe you're put into work camps so that your labor supports the other people.
Mhm.
And they want to do this based on skin color. And they will admit, I feel like that sounds hyperbolic, but
No,
I've
it's
had
not. What
discussions
else
with
could it
people
mean?
where they will admit that. Yeah, that it doesn't mean, it can't mean anything else because they don't have any other end game. There's no moment where they say, "Oh, okay, that's enough." Have they mentioned that to you? Like, when will they agree that it's done? Was 600,000 deaths in the Civil War not enough? No, it's not enough. And what is enough? It's our erasure.
Yeah, that's the logical extrapolation of that viewpoint. I mean, it can't mean anything else. If that's what you're obsessed with, and you think that like whiteness is a parasitical mind virus afflicting the world, I mean, the logical conclusion is you have to get rid of it. You have to
Get rid
kill
of
it.
it. Yeah, because it can't be left alive to torment and perpetuate its wickedness on other people. I know that this is how white people are being looked at right now, and it is being allowed. And I mean, it's just, we've really got to push back on this. It's probably my biggest
Yeah.
it's my biggest fear, or my
Well,
biggest issue is this race stuff, because it's so gross, it's so unfair, and it's really that it's always combined with that bloodlust kind of thing. And now, of course, the whole MAGA Republican, whatever, even though a lot of Black people and Mexicans are Republicans, and a lot of prominent Republicans are Black people and Mexicans at this point, they're being called white supremacists. Even the Black people are being called white supremacists. It's just like, this is their label for evil, is white. So whiteness, you know.
yeah.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to share with you guys, just to further this colonialism thing going on here, there's this movie out. I was going to call it the Wakanda movie, but that's not right. It's a big budget film, getting a lot of buzz, Oscar buzz and stuff. It stars a big star, Viola Davis. Here, I'll play the trailer for you because it's.
I haven't even heard of this one.
Are you?
Oh, no.
Can you see it?
Yeah, The Woman King.
The Woman King is the movie, and so it's about an African tribe that fought the French, I guess, and they had women warriors.
Oh, I did see this trailer. Okay.
An evil is coming
French.
that threatens our kingdom, our freedom.
We're not evil. Our kingdom isn't evil. An evil is coming, and it's the French. And they're taking my freedom, and he's the chief. So it's really his freedom that they're threatening, not so much his people's freedom.
But we have a weapon.
Women. This checks all the
They are not
boxes.
prepared for.
This is all the woke boxes checked. Female,
My
Black
king,
power.
The Europeans wish to conquer us. They will not stop until the whole of Africa is theirs. We must fight back for our people.
Notice how like clean their environment is. Like, it's so fake because that's not how it was, you know?
No.
The savage environment is the organized, clean, beautiful. The colors are gorgeous. I'm just going to back up here a second. When they're standing in that hallway, it's beautiful, you know, like this is a beautiful throne room. This reminds me of throne rooms that you saw in Egypt in civilized ancient history, you know, this kind of noble. Look at this hallway. You've got the lit, the lights going along it, you know, and the torches, as if they had that. I mean, come on. We're supposed to believe these people were these noble, clean, perfect brutes.
Maneska, you are asking me to take them to war. War.
Some things are worth fighting for.
My mud hut is way worth fighting for.
You are called to join the King's Guard. No
Female
kingdom
power.
in all of Africa shares this privilege. Train hard, fight harder. We fear no one. And we fear no pain. I offer you a choice. Fight or we die.
God, that's brutal.
Ready for war, where you run?
To be a warrior, you must kill your tears.
We are the spear of victory!
I just look at this and I think, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I just want to be a woman having a couple babies. Like, who the hell would want to be a warrior?
So this is supposed to be about I mean, I haven't researched this a lot. I did read a book about the transatlantic slave trade, so I know a little bit about the kingdom of Dahomey.
It's the kingdom of Dahomey. And I'm going to read you what Matt Walsh said about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So he goes, oh, is this the movie about the tribe of slave traders who got obliterated by the French in their one major battle? These weren't just slave traders. The kingdom of Dahomey built its whole society around slavery and the slave trade. They murdered and conquered in pursuit of slaves. But they were Black, so it's okay to glorify them in a Hollywood film. If you're wondering how the film will deal with the slavery problem, apparently it pretends that the female warriors were avowed abolitionists. This is pure fiction.
That's right. And I had done a whole pod on my thing. Historical, like it was the Black kingdoms at this time attacked and imperialized each other. They took their way of conquering a rival tribe or kingdom was to enslave them. They sold Black slaves to European slave traders. That's how it worked. Like white people really wouldn't even go on shore. I mean, it was too dangerous. It was the Blacks who sold other Black people to the Western slave traders. So this is so stupid.
It is so stupid.
It's like a Hollywoodization of something that's way more complicated to just, again,
that's not even complicated. That is simple. The boats pulled up, the Black people put the slaves on the boat. The Black people conquered another tribe, enslaved them, and sold them to white people in boats. Simple. But they cut out what they want to cut out because the people are using this to manipulate Black people and to enslave everyone.
It's propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same. Again, that's not
even a nuanced take.
This is the artistic concretization of that tweet, the Uja Anya tweet.
That's right. That's why I played it. I felt like they were the same.
It's superficial collectivization of history. Good guys, bad guys.
Well, and cut out all the facts. It's the 1619 Project. Cut out all the facts and say America was founded and built on slavery. Fuck you guys, all of you. It is ignoring everything. All right. I get so angry about this. Okay, let's calm down. Oh, this is funny. Okay, here's an Indian woman who blames her weight on colonialism.
Makes sense.
I actually love this. I watched this and I just thought, oh my God, this is, I gotta rewind this to the very beginning. This is so perfect. It's such comedy. It's so funny that it could be satire, but it's not. Okay, this is on my Instagram, and I don't think it's going to start it at the beginning.
Discovered.
Let me see if I
and
can
if they didn't
refresh.
get this,
I'm going to refresh.
To you why white people are the reason I'm fat today.
White people are the reason I'm fat
If white
today.
people didn't go looking for spices, then various sea routes to Indian subcontinent and Africa and other places of the world would not get discovered. And if they didn't get discovered, then East India Company would never come to Indian subcontinent. And if they didn't come, then the fertility of the land would not get destroyed because they forced us to cultivate tobacco and dyes and opioid, things like that. And that destroyed the fertility of my country. And then if that didn't happen, and if they didn't exploit and extract resources until my ancestors were left with nothing to eat, we wouldn't move to this grain heavy, very little nutritious diet that we have today. Also, if white people didn't come to the Indian subcontinent, then my ancestors would not go through 50 small, medium, large famines in a period of 200 years.
Famine made her fat. I just want to pause there. 2 or 3 famines made her fat.
Got it.
That's
Famine made her fat.
And in 1943, nearly 3 million people would not have died due to starvation and malnutrition. And if that didn't happen, then this entire
so many
place, I'm going to prove to you why white people are the reason I'm fat today.
Okay, let's stop there. So this is like a if then, and and if this happened, then this happened. If this happened, then this happened. If there weren't famine, then I wouldn't be fat today.
But at no point is there, if I didn't eat a cheeseburger from McDonald's, I wouldn't be fat.
How about shut your pie hole? Like try that.
There's no
like everyone else, sweetie, you're fat because you eat too much and the wrong things. And she's like literally blaming her wheat addiction on colonialism.
She has no control. I mean, apparently she's just a zombie. She's just been programmed to eat grains, and there's nothing she can do about it.
This woman blames
except go on TikTok.
All of her misery and unhappiness on white people. And she doesn't say the British or the colonial. She says white people. Mm-hmm. That means me and you. We are the reason she's fat. This is freaky, man.
Yeah, this is like a 2 + 2 is 5 argument. It's so preposterous that it's like, where do you start other than to just make fun of it? And I liked the comments, the list of comments on there are so fantastic.
Let's read some comments. So it says, she knows that famine means you don't eat, right? Wait, is she eating them? Let's see. Just typical stuff, take responsibility. Don't blame everyone else. This is a personal problem.
But it's so obvious to anyone with common sense, but like, this is a deep-seated ideology now. And this is like common in the universities. This is so stupid. It's laughable to us, but like,
this is a mainstream point of view.
Right. I'm sure she got this from one of her professors or school teachers. I mean, she didn't think of this on her own.
And if you step back and think of it that way, I actually can feel kind of sorry for people who have been psychologically raised to look outside of themselves for solutions to their own problems that they could easily solve themselves with a little bit of, if you're overweight and you're really unhappy about it, it's not that it's not hard, but it's not really that hard. You just have to get started. And I've been there. I've had a lot of steroids and weight fluctuations from the steroids. It's not always easy to get started. Hormones like steroids and things being in the way makes it harder. So I'm not belittling it if you're struggling with weight, but usually people who are overweight go, I need to eat less. I need to go on a diet. I need to exercise more. They don't go, this is white people's fault, or this is, something completely beyond your control.
Well, this is like what Haidt and Greg Lukianoff talked about as the enablement of cognitive disorders by universities and educational institutions, whereby instead of adopting the wisdom of cognitive behavioral therapy, all the different principles of CBT that have been understood or discovered, studied over the last 50 years about how to deal with addiction, depression, anxiety, all sorts of mental disorders. This ideology is tailor-made to provoke, induce, and exacerbate and enable anyone with cognitive behavioral problems. Like, hey, I'm fat. So instead of saying, boy, how do I think about like why I'm eating too much? I'm not exercising enough. What do I need to do to take responsibility for that or whatever? It's blaming other people outside of you. It's labeling yourself, I'm a fat person. Then labeling other people as being evil, like everything's outside your agency. Like you could sit here and list, like just as an idiot who doesn't know that much about psychology, like 10 obvious mental disorders there that are being enabled by someone who's teaching her, this is not your fault. You have no control over this.
You don't have any power in your life to make your life better because you are being oppressed. You're weak. And it's really disabling. And it's definitely the case that the powers that be are trying to propagandize everyone into a mental disorder right now. I mean, you're seeing that too with the trans stuff with kids and the all of that. So it's a weird, it's a really weird thing.
Well, fundamentally, it's a view that you don't control your own mind. And so, like, of course, they would throw out cognitive behavioral therapy or clinical psychology, because why would you be able to help yourself or change your ways of thinking or whatever? No, it's just, you are oppressed, you're a victim, you're a piece of a collective, you're a part of a group that's been oppressed or disadvantaged in some way, and all you can do now is lash out at your oppressor. That's the path to salvation.
And we see this everywhere where they're training people to Black people or any non-white person. Anything that happens to you, if it's a customer service person was a jerk, or things that happen to everybody, like everyday annoyances when you're dealing with other people, are automatically this bigger, wider issue of the world is against you. And imagine that, like yesterday, it took me 45 minutes to make an appointment and I was super frustrated and I was transferred around, and like I could easily be like, well, it's because I'm white. I mean, I obviously it's not the case. But if that were the case, it would go from, man, that system is messed up, like their customer service is disorganized, or that person is a jerk, or that person needs more training, to the world is against me.
Yes.
And it's a worldview that they're implanting in people. There was the Emmys were just the other night, and there was a Black woman who was accepting an award, and Jimmy Kimmel did a bit. And in that bit, people are saying his bit went too far and it took away attention from her getting her award, which it probably did. It was kind of rude, but it wasn't racial. And of course, everyone's making it racial because Jimmy Kimmel's white and she's Black. And therefore, any accidental rudeness, I mean, it was accidental. He's just trying to make a joke. It was a bit. It was pre-planned. And it went too far, or it didn't go over very well. And it wasn't racial in any way at all. It was just that he was lying on the stage,
unconscious
passed out.
Bias.
Speaking of unconscious, he was lying on the stage pretending to be unconscious while she was accepting her award. And so she was taking some of the attention off of her because he was just laying there. And that is what they're now calling racist. And the media is throwing this out now as, was it racist? Was it racist? And it's training everybody in our society to see race for every little tiny slight, or if a cop shoots a perp, it's got to be racism. It can't just be that the perp had a gun and pointed it at him, or maybe the cop was wrong, but it still wasn't racial. Like, it's not. Everything has to be about race for these people so that they can have victims and oppressors. Yep. All right, I'm going to share my screen one last time here and play this Jordan Peterson clip where he's talking about the Queen's passing, and toward the end, he talks about that shame issue.
Ever talks about the fact that the UK was the country that eradicated slavery. That only happened once in the whole history of the human race. You know, and your country did it. It took 175 years. And a huge economic, yeah. No, it was your country and the great people who were spearheading that movement at the time that established once and for all on the political and economic front that was not to be tolerated. And then, you know, it took a while for that idea to spread everywhere. It still hasn't, because there's plenty of slaves in the world. The estimate's 30 million at the moment, by the way. But there are very few people who will come out forthrightly and say that it's right, that it's okay, that, you know, might makes right. And your country was definitely one of the moral forces in the world, the primary moral force on the political front, who established once and for all that was no longer acceptable. And so, and yet, mostly what characterizes a fair bit of self-image in Great Britain is shame. And you know, every country has things to be ashamed of, but not every country also has things to be proud of. So what do we think? What's going to happen with the Commonwealth? Well, maybe we'll wise up and recognize that we have something absolutely precious to guard. And then maybe we'll guard it. But
what bothers me about what he said there was, and this gets to my point earlier today, do countries sometimes do bad things? Yes. But does that mean that you should actually feel ashamed, or that they should be ashamed? And it really depends. And I think we need to be super careful allowing that word and allowing any moral guilt ascribed to people for doing things that within their time frame and their context were either a better version of what was going on or perfectly normal in the times. It's by just even accepting, oh yeah, they should be, those are things that we can be ashamed of. I just don't agree with that. I think you have to reject that first. Those are not things that we should be ashamed of. They were not shameful at the time. At the time, they were a better version of the same shit that everyone else was doing. You know?
to do that, we're going to have to defend ourselves against unwarranted accusations of guilt.
Yes.
Not that there's not something
Again, he
to be guilty
qualifies
about,
it.
you know, because
There's
we're all the
nothing to be
beneficiaries
guilty
of
about. Listen to him say
the
that.
atrocities of history.
He says, protect yourself against guilt. Not that there isn't real guilt to be had over things that we had nothing to do with, A, and B, aren't really shameful in the context of history, right? So he concedes the point right after he says, don't accept it. I thought that was really weird. Should I play that again?
About, you know, because we're all the beneficiaries of the atrocities of history.
We're all the beneficiaries of the atrocities of history.
Yeah.
Am I the beneficiary of atrocities? Or am I the beneficiary of all the good things? Because I wouldn't necessarily be here today if it wasn't for the positives. It's the positives that make my society civil and that make me capable of working and living a good life. And, you know, it's not the atrocities that led to this kind of happy life.
I don't know. I hate to even associate guilt with this idea because it's everything. There's a unique set of trillions of factors that went into like why we're here. There were bad things and good things, and it now here we are. So what do we do?
Am I supposed to feel bad that my Viking ancestors slaughtered Anglo-Saxons in taking over England? And then am I supposed to feel bad about my English Anglo-Saxon ancestors who killed Danes in trying to defend their lands. And then, and it was freaking brutal.
And you could go on and on and on of
Am I supposed to be,
every
is that an atrocity that has led to today's life? Yes, I guess so. But, because my language, my culture is a Viking Anglo-Saxon mix, that is England, that's the British heritage. And so how do you say, oh, it's a weird thing. It's a weird concept to ascribe guilt or shame at all to any of that stuff. Within the times, it was normal to be brutal. And so it wasn't unique to the Vikings or unique to the Anglo-Saxons. How do you even make that comment that he's even saying? He's saying, we are here because of atrocities. We have to accept that. I don't accept that. I think if by accepting that, we are accepting an unearned guilt. Do you agree? I mean, I feel like he's discounting his own message there.
Yes, I think it would probably require like a deeper conversation about like what he's, what I think he's getting at and everything else. And there's an aspect of it I understand, but I think, for what he's trying to do, I don't think it's appropriate. And I think we should just get away from accepting unearned guilt, period.
On behalf of ourselves and our ancestors, though, too.
Do better.
That's what I'm saying.
Live your life.
Do better, right?
Do better. Live a good life. Do what you can. Yeah. And why are we going back into this like grievance? It's like this cottage industry of grievance archaeology. You go back in history, try and find something you said or did, or other people that were related to you, like by 17 different generations of connections, did something good or bad, and I'm going to feel proud of that. I'm proud of what my ancestors did, or no, I'm shamed by what my ancestors did. Like I'm neither. I mean, I am what I am,
I'm rather proud in the sense that I want to protect my inheritance from these really amazing people in history who set up.
You're actually right. I should say that. You're right.
Who set up this free society that I live in.
Yeah, we should be, if anything, given where we're at, we should be very, very grateful. And I don't mean to just be totally agnostic. I'm not at all. I mean, I have so much reverence for anyone who fought for the good things in life and who sacrificed themselves, or, all the work and effort and
courage
genius and
the pushing against the dictators of the world. I mean, look at where we are today and how hard it is just to push back against that. I have to wear a mask in a medical building, like I don't know if I can push back against that. I don't know. It's so hard. People look at me funny. and imagine getting the Magna Carta done,
or fighting the British,
compared to our weak ass, like, oh, I don't know if I can fight this tyranny.
And we have to atone for that in our personal behavior.
No, we don't.
By the same token, man, you're supposed to separate the wheat from the chaff and not just call it all chaff. And when you look at your own history, you think, we stumbled plenty, but we still walked uphill.
All right, so that's all I'm going to play of that. Anyway, I think I made my point. On that. Okay, so let's do you have any last thoughts on this whole colonialism thing? I want to get into a royal report to end the show, and we'll talk about Meghan.
No, go ahead.
All right, let's do a royal report.
Now it's time for the House of Sunny's Royal Watch.
So there's going to be more of this. There's a lot of news because obviously there's a bunch of stuff going on with the funeral and everything. But the big Meghan news was that apparently William, the new Prince of Wales, extended an olive branch to Harry and Meghan saying, hey, come and walk with us and view the flowers and say hello to the people. And this was like, reunited or whatever. Ooh, I just burped. This was like reunited, and people were talking a lot about it. Like, did William extend this olive branch? Did King Charles III tell him to do it? There was a rumor about that. No, it was just him. And then, well, should he have done it? Well, no, he shouldn't have done it because, and I was thinking for a while, he shouldn't have done it because it kind of made them seem equal. And now William is the Prince of Wales, and he shouldn't be walking with this idiot Hollywood Suits actress and her husband. These nobodies.
Mr.
And
and Mrs. Markle.
they're nobodies by their own choice. They left the royal family by their own choice. And now he's got to like act like they're equals in order to extend the olive branch. They're not equals. So I was a little annoyed at first. And then I heard that the reason he did it was that they were going to do their own walkabout, viewing flowers and shaking hands. And they had invited their whole like media news, Netflix kind of thing to record it.
Oh my
and
God.
William, rather than let that happen, invited them to join them. So this is all rumor and everything, and nobody really knows, but the whole thing, Meghan Markle's just gross. She's
So they're
just
doing a Netflix thing, the Harry Meghan.
Yeah, they've been filming a
Mr.
behind the scenes like reality show, Harry and Meghan. They've got to make money. So his book is coming out, and now that the Queen is dead, they're going to push for its release. I think they were kind of waiting for it, I guess, and now they're saying they want it to come out in November. And it's going to bash the king and the queen consort and probably William and other people in the royal family. It's going to be a heck of a, he had to sell that. He had to sell that in order to make money. He sold out his family, and he's probably lying about them too, given that they've already done that. All the lies they've already been caught telling about the royal family. So anyway, who knows? But if they were going to do this like crass money-making camera filmed exploitation of the Queen's death, and William's like, oh God, we can't let that happen. I wish he would have just let it happen. Those people they just need to do what they do and let everybody just be appalled. That's, I think, in the best interest of the royal family, is for them to lose all of their stature by being who they are. And by inviting them, he lends them credibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a mistake, no matter what the reason.
Yeah, they need to cut them off.
Totally. And take
They're beneath.
And before the Queen died, she gave this speech in the UK. They were in the UK when the Queen died, just coincidentally. She was giving a speech, and they introduced her as Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. And I thought she wasn't interested in titles and wasn't interested in the royal family and wanted no publicity and wanted to, have a quiet life in Hollywood. And she gets
Quiet Life on Netflix.
Right. And she gets introduced as Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. I mean, she's such a fucking poser. She's such a ladder climber. Okay, so she did this speech, and that's what I wanted to share with you guys because it's so funny. The Daily Mail counted how many times she said I, because it was all about her. Let's show this to you. I give you Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. I'm working on an imitation of her, by the way. I was practicing it this morning, and it's kind of hard. I'm struggling with it.
Very nice to be back in the UK.
Very nice to be back in the UK.
Deeply and profoundly believed in. And also looking around and wondering, how on earth did I get here? And there I was. I was the girl from Suits.
I was a girl from Suits.
And I was surrounded by world leaders, humanitarians, prime ministers, and activists
Oh
that I
my
had
God, this is
such
so cringe.
deep and long-standing respect and admiration for. And I was invited.
To pull up a seat at the table.
I was so overwhelmed.
People are
by this
cringing.
experience. I think think I even saved my little paper place card that said my name on it.
I think I saved
Come
my name
on.
card because I was so amazed that people recognized how amazing I am.
Proof that I was there. And proof.
This is like the Sally Fields "People Like Me" speech from the
Yes,
Oscars.
it
I wasn't
is.
sure that I belonged.
I wasn't sure.
Nervous.
I was so
I doubted
nervous.
myself, and I wondered if I was good enough to even be there, if what I was doing in the world, albeit important and meaningful as far as I saw it, was it deserving?
She is such a
to have seat at this
sociopath.
table? But one young world saw in me what I wanted to see fully in myself. They saw in me just as I see in you.
One young world saw in me my greatness, and they were great for seeing my greatness.
The present and the future.
Just as I see in you, and by the way, that doesn't make you great. That makes me great for seeing your greatness.
The first year I joined the delegation in Dublin, I worked with a young woman from Eritrea. I followed up that trip, as David mentioned, to joining the delegation again in 2016 in Ottawa. I was very lucky to receive a day off of filming
I was very lucky to receive a day off of filming. Did I mention I was filming? Did I mention that I was filming? I was a star.
Specifically, I joined you in London in 2019, and by that point, it's fair to say, my life had changed rather significantly. I was now married, and I was now a mom.
She says I was now married and I was now a mom, and she's just leaving out the part that I married into the royal family of Britain. She's just letting that hang there. Oh, I was now married, but I won't say that I was married to a prince.
No, because it's about her. I was married.
She paused there and waited for the applause. Look at this. Look at this.
She's so phony, it hurts.
My worldview had expanded exponentially, seeing the global community through the eyes of my child. And I would ask, what is this world?
Excuse me, seeing the global community through the eyes of my child? What sort of leftist BS is that, right?
Whoa.
To adopt. And what can we do? What can I do to make it better? I am thrilled that my husband is able to join me here this time.
Did I mention my husband's a prince?
One Young World has been an integral part of my life for so many years before I met him.
Who is applauding this?
To meet again here on UK soil with him by my side makes it all feel full circle. And just
to come here to you as one of the most important people in the world now because I've married a prince.
Just as a sidebar, earlier this
Did I
afternoon,
mention I was
sat down
filming?
with a few of you delegates, and it was incredibly inspiring. My husband has long advocated for important and necessary impact in the world, focusing a huge part of his life's work on the youth. And with that, it is my absolute honor and pleasure to declare this year's One Young World Summit officially open.
Oh my God, she's so full of herself. It's hard to even
What?
bear. It's
She
hard.
was just opening a summit?
Yeah. It's hard to bear how full of herself she is. It's just unbelievable, actually.
Yeah, the self-centeredness meter just exploded. I mean, she was opening some sort of like forum or summit. And
yeah,
it was
like
somehow she got in that she was filming, that she's married, she's so important, and it's opened her eyes to the global community.
watching the global community through my child's eyes. And he said, goo goo gaga. And I said, wow, that's profound. Okay, I'm going to share one more thing because I wasn't even going to play this one, but it's too good. And if you liked that, you're going to love this. So she did this podcast with Mariah Carey. She's now released a couple episodes of her podcast. And the last one she did was with Mariah Carey. And there was this weird really awkward, weird moment where Mariah Carey mentioned that she thought Meghan Markle was a diva. And Meghan got offended, and you could hear that she actually really got offended. And then you hear Mariah kind of trying to back down from it. I don't think Mariah meant anything mean by that because, the word diva, a lot of women own that, especially women, prominent entertainers.
Yeah, bit of a diva.
They're fine with that. It's like, well, you've earned being a diva if you've earned it. And not that Meghan has, but she probably thinks she has. Anyway, so she had that moment with Mariah Carey, and it probably wouldn't have been much of a thing, except then she pulled that out and like introduced her podcast saying, oh, that moment was really awkward and weird. And now there's this comedian woman who pulled out those moments of the podcast and just overdubbed Meghan, and watch her expressions. It is hilarious. You have to, I'm sorry if you're listening to this podcast, you're not going to see this, but you can at least, if you're listening, you'll hear Meghan's ridiculous things that she said. If you're not watching this comedian's face while she's imitating Meghan, this is an overdub. So this is actually Meghan talking, and this woman's just lip syncing to her talking.
Yes, the diva thing we can play into. I mean, it's not something that I connect to, but for you, it's been a huge part of your
diva moments sometimes, Meghan.
What kind of diva moments do I give you?
Don't act like you. It's also the visual. It's the visual.
Though my fangirling was tempered today, I kind of think she could tell. But that aside, it was all going swimmingly. I mean, really well. Until that moment happened, which I don't know about you, but it stopped me in my tracks. When she called me a diva. Yes, the diva thing we can play into. I mean, it's not something that I connect
don't
to.
identify with
But
being a
for
diva.
you, it's been a huge part of
You are a
diva
diva.
moments sometimes, Meghan.
What kind
Don't
of diva
even
moments
act
do
like,
I give you?
Don't act like you. It's also the visual. It's the visual.
Though my fangirling was tempered today.
She says, my fangirling was tempered today. So in other words, when Mariah Carey called her a diva, her fangirling became tempered, and she
Right.
thinks Mariah could tell. So don't call me a diva, girl, or I won't be such a big fan of you.
I'll
is a
temper my
freak.
fangirling.
She's talking to Mariah Carey.
And it's all about her reaction to the comment.
Yeah.
I just can't. I mean,
It's hard to, it's almost embarrassing, this level of
the acuity. I mean, it's just, it's just so
that
stupid.
she doesn't see herself. I don't understand. And I now believe Harry is such an idiot. I mean, a moron. How could he not see this?
Who would marry someone like that? I mean, I just don't.
Her whole phoniness, her whole fakeness. She couldn't be more fake. And more of a like
Social climber.
social climbing psychopath.
Yeah, it's like it's so obvious on its face exactly what she is. Like within 3 seconds, anyone with just an ounce of common sense would be like, this girl screams psycho. Like,
Yeah.
don't get near this.
Right.
This is bad
This
news.
is crazy ex-girlfriend stuff.
And he marries her.
And he's a prince. What I don't understand is how the royal family let him marry her. I don't really understand how that works, but they used to decline to allow people to marry people. So I don't know. Like there's that whole
We
story
got to
of
bring that back.
the queen's sister couldn't marry the man she fell in love with because he'd been divorced. That was it. That was the only reason.
Yeah, like aren't all
And-
those old movies all about how like, the two kids are in love and the arranged marriage parents are, declining to allow the two that are in love to marry because the daughter has to marry someone for practical purposes.
that's
like,
right.
They should redo this where it's like,
Yeah.
no,
I-
you're not marrying her. And everyone's like, yeah, like there's like no problem whatsoever with
Yeah,
that.
and 200 years ago they would have just killed her to make sure he didn't marry her.
Like, no.
They're just secretly taking care of that problem on the side.
And then he would be like, yeah, instead of like instead of fighting against it and professing his true love and going outside the royal family, he'd be like, you know what? I was kind of like, you guys were right. You really saved me one there. You did me a solid there. Like I was kind of like, I was lusting after this chick, and she, in hindsight, total psycho. I'm glad you kept me out of that one.
Yeah. Right.
A range away.
Right. You're not too well. And the thing is that should happen to somebody who's too young and immature to make a good decision for themselves. But he was in his mid-30s when he married her.
Yeah, he had a lot of data.
So, all right, that's it for our show today. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. I had a hard time choosing topics today. I had so many things I wanted to talk about. So next week we'll have another show. Obviously, I think we're going to decide between, I don't know, I was going to do a medical cartel show or like what's wrong with our medical system show, because Candace Owens had a crazy birth story that just demonstrates how bad hospitals are. And then I think the other topic I was thinking of doing was probably just more race stuff. So let me know in the comments, though, what you want us to talk about. We love to get your comments, and we'll talk about that stuff. We can talk about stoicism. Yeah, we were going to do a show on that. So on the meditations, being more like Marcus Aurelius, not the stuff that he should be ashamed of, the dictator stuff, but the other stuff that he shouldn't be ashamed of, that we are benefiting from today. Yes, we've benefited from his atrocities. So let's maybe examine that.
Atone for it.
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining us. See you next week.
It's been the demise of bad ideas, and we'll know what's right when she's done. So download this free podcast now and give perspectives you may lack. It's concise and right and achieves world peace, guaranteed all your money back. Last time, ready?